The myth for today is programmers are boring. You know, when you talk to programmers, we don't have really anything to talk to. You know, when you go on a date and you get like, you know, you do that like bumblebee or whatever bee or butterfly, and then you get matched with the programmer, and then you're kind of like, oh shoot, I don't know what to talk about because they probably talk with computers. You know, some people might feel like that's what programmers are doing, but the myth is that programmers are boring and that they have dull job. What do you guys think? Do you think they have a dull job or that they're boring? And why do people... Where did this myth even come from, guys? Where? Like, what did you guys do to people that they made, you know, that gave this image? When did you guys become boring, I guess, is the big question. So, let's start with, are you guys boring? And why they came out? 원래 일은 지루한 거 아니냐고요? 그쵸, 일은 지루한 건데 그러게 왜 굳이 프로그래머들만 지루하다고 생각할까요? Maybe those people are stupid? I no longer wonder why programmers are asocial. But I think this myth came out. Let's start with where or why this myth might have come out from. This kind of relates to antisocial or the asocial that we just talked about. They cannot function without computers. So people think that because they can't function with computers, they get this image. That's so sad. It's like, oh, like, oh, and one of the reasons why I think you guys are boring, or I think maybe not the word boring, but the word that fits the most is they make really weird dad jokes. Like, programmers come to my chat and, you know, we talk about funny programming stories, and the first thing I get from you guys is println dot something. 뭐지? What's the Java phrase? 그 뭐지? Parentheses, quotation, shut the F up. Maybe not dad jokes, but they keep doing that to me, and I'm like, where am I supposed to laugh? Because I think they're doing this being like, oh, we are a robot and we are really funny for doing this. Like lame jokes, I guess, then. But I think this too is why it's related, because they are kind of, you know, maybe antisocial. Yeah, that thing! Look what he just did! That println hello world! They do this to me! And I'm like, what do you want me to do? Like, I don't know if you guys keep talking to me in programming language, I don't know how to react. And that's probably what the other, like, if you go on a date, and if you do that, obviously you guys won't do that, but just in case if you guys ever do that, then people like me are gonna be like, what am I supposed to react to? Like, how am I supposed to react to that, right? Most programmers are stuck on a screen and tapping on keyboards for hours without external interactions. So naturally, people see them as boring guy that only looks at the screen. Oh, 그치. Yeah, that's true. Because then what is a cool job that people think? Probably something, you know, businessy, you know, they have to be like going in front of a computer, and, you know, they have to give that big monitor and give that like fancy presentation in a nice suit up, being like, this, that, is that, and then this and this and that, and then you get this. And that's probably what people think is a cool job then? I'm a self-taught programmer, and I'm honestly not familiar with the stuff you say. Which one? Like, what part? I hope no one says for a for loop in person. Only sports job are cool. Oh. Money makes anything cool nowadays? I don't think so. I think it's just... When you go, I'm like, the biggest setting that I get that this type of question comes up, or this myth, is in a blind date. You meet a person and you ask, like, what do you do? Like, what's your job? They're like, I'm a programmer. Like, if you say you're a business person, you could be like, oh, like, what's the business you're doing? And they could go on and on. But when you say you're a programmer, the first thing that comes to your mind is, this person probably don't want to talk to me, or they're on their computer 24/7. And that they probably watch Twitch, watching other e-girls. I don't know. That's probably not true. But that's kind of like where I'm thinking this myth comes from. My guess is that most programmers don't talk about programming with non-programmers outside of work, so people don't know they are. So only the weird ones that only talk about programming 24/7 are noticed as being programmers. Oh, I think someone would be more inclined to say, "Oh, you must be smart." Oh, and when you say you're a programmer, maybe that's recent day. I think all these myths that we're talking about might be in 1990s. Just all this programmer talk. Maybe because I don't have a job yet. Oh, I don't know. If anything, girls would have hard time having. If anything, girls would have a hard time having a follow-up question if they aren't specialized in that area. Here's the thing. Other jobs, you can always connect to like, oh, what do you make, right? But when you talk about programming and you're like, oh, what do you make? I make an app. What does your Mac do? But then when you say you're a lawyer, then it kind of be like, ooh, like, you could have funny stories. Like, what are some crazy cases out there that you've heard of? Like, you know, like, it could relate. But in terms of programmers, you think that they don't have any funny stories. Or that, like, you can't continue with this conversation. If that person is there at a date, how can he be on a screen 24/7? I mean, you know, like, he took an hour or two off. Even in 2010, programmers still get discriminated in society. Things only change after we have COVID. Oh, we all have an app. What's the craziest app you ever had to code? Like, no one want to ask that question. What's the biggest bug you ever encountered? Like, who cares? 모르겠어. Like, for me as a girl, if I'm on a date, I got a programmer, I don't know nothing about programming, I don't think I'll ever ask a job question. Like, I don't, like, you're not gonna be at a blind date where the girl asks, oh, what language do you program in? Are you a front end? Or are you a back end developer? Or do you do cloud? All they're gonna probably think are either you guys are super nerdy and that you guys probably sit at home watching something, or that like you guys are Bill Gates and you have like tons of money. Most athletes have God-gifted abilities, so they'll be millionaires, but a 300K developer who can take care of a family will make anyone think they're cool. That's cool. Lawyers are pretty boring, actually, especially transactional attorneys. Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like lawyers, maybe because I've never met a lawyer and I've been used to programmers, but I'd be interested in hearing like crazy stories out there, being like, oh my god, there was this. But like, what are some funny stories that programmers have? That's the thing. And that's probably why people think programmer or like the job of programming is boring, because they don't have funny stories. You're not gonna be like, oh my god, like the other day there was this huge bug in my programming. It took me like the whole day to find the bug. Isn't that so crazy? Like, who's gonna be like, oh my god, that's so funny. Oh my god, I'm laughing. You are so funny. Like, no one's gonna have that reaction. They're gonna be like, what's a, like, so? Or like, you can't be like, I gave you this presentation and like, you know, I guess programmers don't really give presentation. Or you can be like, oh my god, I finally found this bug and then it like worked, but then I found a different bug. It was so crazy. Like, there's no stories that's gonna be like super funny for programmers. And that's probably why this myth came true, saying that programmers have a dull job or that they're boring because they don't have funny stories. But, you know, if you could try to relate with programmers, some of these stories could be funny, right? So it can be, I changed the wallpaper of company for Gandalf picture. Like, am I laughing? Trying to think. If I were in engineering, what are some funny stories? Yeah. So engineering also might have interesting funny stories, but like researcher, programmer, so anything that doesn't deal with like anything where you don't talk to people, I think have boring jobs probably then. Tech support people often have funny stories because they also deal with lots of regular random people. Yeah, I think that's true. So maybe the real definition is that it's not just programmers, but any job that's not client facing. And if you guys disagree with this, Give me a funny story of a job that you guys are in for those who are programmers and make me laugh. But in terms of maybe dull job, yeah, honestly, job that I wanted to do when I was young was I wanted to be a consultant, you know those fancy, like I'm in the big four, whatever their thingamabobby consultant, and kind of be like, hi, and then kind of give that like fancy speech and like do my research, spend all night working, and then do it because it looked cool. But then like maybe for me, as like when I'm looking at a programmer, I feel like all they're doing is, because consultant, you get a way to persuade someone, right? But in terms of programmers, I just felt like, oh, they're probably only on their computer 24/7. Maybe once like an hour or two, they go for a meeting, or like they have smoke break or coffee breaks and yada yada yada. But you're just in front of the computer and really not doing much. And I think that's why the dull job came, right? Like why people think it's a dull job. Is this a funny story or is this just random story? One time I was coding this software to classify wounds, and some doctor were saying it couldn't be very accurate. Fast forward some month later, and the software was smacking top tier doctors who had been practicing for several doctors in terms of classifying diabetes, venoms, etc wound. I'm sorry. 미안해! But don't say this to your blind date. I'm so sorry! I'm sorry! It's not funny! I'm laughing cause I'm trying to figure out where the comedy part was. I am so sorry. Oh my god. I just feel bad because he's probably spent time, like 2 minutes writing this story to make me laugh, and I just kind of gave him this look. I'm very sorry. Yeah, but it was supposed to be a funny story, right? And here's the funny. You know what the funny story means? It's a story where you end up laughing, right? But it's just kind of like, okay, so what? Like, that's what I feel bad about. Like, I didn't want to say that word, but I was like, okay, like, that's really cool. Like, it's really cool and interesting, but... So it was just to make someone... You're making fun of doctors instead of your own job. That we can all do. We can all make fun of people, right? But if you're making fun of your own job, that's not that hard. That's not that easy. No, it's okay. It was interesting. Your story was very interesting, and I could understand where people might have laughed too, but I was just kind of like, okay. So, anyways, long story short, this myth, I want to say, maybe it's somewhat true, but I feel like it's not just programmers who are boring / dull job, and that there are jobs out there. Like, guys, honestly, most jobs are dull and boring. So it's not just programming, but programming job does seem to the public a bit boring than other jobs. It's a cool job. I don't go against it because, it's you guys who are making it possible for me to stream, right? And you guys are really cool and everything, and that like everyone wants your job, but it's just that in the eyes of other people, it looks like you guys are just on your computer 24/7, typing in and getting frustrated that your code doesn't work. Myth busted? I don't think myth is kind of busted. I don't think it's more boring than other jobs, but people just don't know how much about programming, so it's hard for general people to relate. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. It's really hard to relate. Like, even for me who learned a bit of programming, it's really hard to relate. Like, I got the story, and like I understand, like, yeah, it's really like, hey, you asshole, you stupid doctors, but it's hard. What's considered a non-boring job, though? To public, definitely sports. Any type of sport job would be interesting, right? Because you guys get to watch it. Probably, I would say any, like, customer dealing job would be interesting because you get to hear all the crazy like customer stories and it just goes out. Like ER would be interesting, I just heard a story about someone punching each other and then like they come to the ER and then gets annoying. There's I think really interesting jobs out there, or like that's not considered boring, but that also being said, there are also boring jobs. Anyways, that's all for the stories, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Well, it'll be better organized next week.